So you have an idea for a TV show, and we're told by some nitwit to go out and make a pilot. Well, at worst, that's a horrible idea, and at best, a complete waste of time and money, especially if you're funding it yourself. You're going to go out and waste a lot of time and money and end up with a subpar product. You're not a showrunner with a full TV budget. The network you're going to go show this to doesn't give two flying shits about the fact that you did it low budget and yourself and indie. They're just going to see a subpar product that they're going to compare to the other options that they have, which are going to be produced by professional producers with full budgets funded by the network. If you're taking money from investors, independent investors, not the network that you're pitching to, you're going to have to go back and tell them, because there's a slim chance that a TV show gets picked up in any world. Now, this isn't to discourage you. There's good news at the end of this, but just bear with me. You're going to have to go back and tell your investors that you lost all their money. And because it's a TV pilot, there's nothing else that you can do with it. It's not like a movie that you spec and then, well, okay, Netflix didn't buy it, so we'll go a self-distribution route. We'll go through festivals. No, you're just stuck with a 20-minute, half-hour piece of content and nothing to do with it. Do you really want to go back to investors and have that conversation? So, shows are partnerships between creators and the networks that distribute them. They're not like movies. Now, the caveat, the exception to the rule here is that you want to put it on YouTube and you just make your own show and you have no intention of getting it on Hulu or NBC or whatnot. But generally, TV shows are partnerships. They run for a long time. They involve a lot of people. You're pigeonholing yourself also, in addition to all this, by making a pilot to your own specific vision, which isn't good, as different network executives from different networks, because you're going to pitch this to a few places, they see things differently. So leaving something to the imagination, in this case, is a good thing. Get over the fact that you're not going to have complete control over your show. All right? So unless you're so big in the industry already, and for that, why are you watching this video? You're way ahead of me in your career. So if the network likes your idea, though, they will fund the pilot or even the first season. Nobody's going to watch the pilot either. So if you make a pilot and you send it out, nobody's going to sit there and watch a half-hour episode of anything. Executives are like flies. They land on your shit for 2 seconds before they're off to another pile of shit. There's a lot more to prove in addition to all this than just the show itself. Going out and making an episode the way you see it doesn't prove nearly everything that you need to prove when you're trying to get a deal with a partner, a network, a distributor to actually go out and make this show long term. We'll get into that and what you should be doing just in a little bit here. So the good news is that if you're already have the pilot in your hand, if you already shot it, it's not a total waste, and I'll tell you what to do. And if you've not wasted your time and money at making the pilot, even better. You'll be alleviated by what you'll hear next, hopefully. Thanks for coming to the channel. My name's Daniel Brea. I'm a media producer and consultant here in Beverly Hills, and I've worked in TV, made movies, viral videos, commercials, yada yada. And if you want to get notified about more videos like this, please like and subscribe, and check out the description section below for links to cool shit. And please drop a comment if you think I'm totally wrong. I'm totally up for grabs here in terms of debating this. I'm all ears, and this stuff is just my opinion based on my personal almost 20 years in the industry. But by no means do I know everything, and I'm always learning myself. So if you have a solid argument for making pilots, please enlighten me. Put the comment in below, and maybe I'll learn something. And please also comment with any questions or requests for more videos that you have. It's hard coming up with content, so if you tell me what you want to know, I'll make a video of it if it makes sense to. So, now what should you do if not make a pilot? Well, you're going to need a few things. If you're lucky enough to actually get in the room with a network executive directly, kudos, but you're going to have to prove more than just the idea of the show. They need to know, first and foremost, the 3 whys. 1, why is this project going to be good? 2, why should the audience care about this, and who is the audience? And 3, why are you the right person to make this? give these questions some thought and really read between the lines. I'm not going to go into depth on everything here on a YouTube video, but really, really study these things and get good at answering those because you're going to need them. And then you got to define the overall type of show. Is it a procedural? Is there an arc? Is it a reality show, a game show? What kind of game show? What kind of reality show? So the Kardashians is totally different from The Amazing Race. You got to define the show. And that goes back to one of the whys. You got to know who it's for, right? Who's the audience? And you should also be pitching to networks that actually means something to. Now, some of the streamers have a broad range, so I get you there, but they have departments within the companies. Netflix has a lot of subdivisions within, and different executives working on different parts of the content acquisitions and development of various types of projects, right? So what kind of show is it? And then you have to define the episode format, meaning, a lot of people just say, hey, well, I have a cool idea about, we should do a show on this. And they go randomly shoot a pilot. But what's the format of the actual show? Meaning, what breaks down, how does every episode break down? What actually happens in every episode, right? So a procedural is different to something that has an arc, that has a through storyline, or a miniseries and stuff like that. Reality shows, again, are totally different one from the other. What's the show structure? And then you got to have a proposed show Bible. And I say proposed because, again, it's a partnership and you don't want to be too rigid. If you're the kind of person who just needs this idea to be all yours, then don't get into TV. All right? It's not going to happen unless you actually come up with millions of dollars and spec the entire show, all the seasons, and Tyler Perry your way through the whole thing. Then you get to, because you own it and you did it and you produced it, you paid for it, and you can go out and license it, syndicate it. But that's a different deal. If you just want to get in bed with a network and or a distributor and create a show, you're going to have to be flexible. So have a proposed show Bible and talk about what the first season needs to look like. Have a document that outlines what happens in the first season, the second season. You don't have to go too far out, but it gives them an idea of now the episodes themselves, and then how they all stitch together, and what the first season and second season might look like. Every episode of season 1 should be, somewhat defined, and unless it's the type of show where it's different, a game show, for instance, where it's more the focus of like what happens in the actual episode itself and what makes that unique. So it helps to have a script for the pilot. So having a pilot script, not an entire shot pilot, is very useful, and I do recommend that you do that, especially if it's a narrative or like a story-driven show, right? But also for reality, you want to have at least a very solid outline of the first episode, what happens, who the characters are. Reality is a lot about like access to places that we can't access ourselves, or glimpses into lifestyles that we covet and things like that. So you have to kind of figure out what the first episode's going to be that's going to really establish the show and make it count. And have a strong point of view, all right? So vanilla doesn't sell at all. Don't try to please everyone. Don't try to make it for everyone. This means it won't stand out at all if you kind of create it sort of in the middle, right? So know the networks that might be interested in the style that you are most behind, and then you might have a slightly tweaked version of it for networks where they might be a little bit more censored or less censored. So if you're pitching to HBO, you're not going to have the same type of conversation as you would with PBS. They're completely different. Well, PBS is different altogether in its structure, but the point is that the vibe isn't the same, so don't have the same pitch for everyone. You're going to have a strong perspective, and that means that not everybody is going to be interested in your project, but that's a good thing, because Game of Thrones couldn't have played on a traditional network, right? So now have your verbal pitch ready, and have a 30-second version, a 3-minute version, and a full 8 to 10, maybe 15 minutes full pitch. Why? You want to be able to pitch this idea to somebody on the fly. If you just meet them, 30-second elevator pitch. You want the 3-minute version. If you do have a pitch session lined up and the executive comes in or the producer comes in and they're like, hey, I got another meeting, I double booked myself, quick, you got 5 minutes, have it ready and be good with it and rehearse the hell out of your pitches verbally. Have 3 comps or comparable shows that you can reference in your pitch, meaning you got to do your research on other shows that are similar. You don't want to copy anybody, but think the pitch for The Voice. They surely they certainly referenced American Idol, but then added, hey, the difference is you only hear the voice. You don't see the person, right? So same but different. You want references that you can kind of paint a picture and get people to understand what you're talking about. It's it's Game of Thrones meets Modern Family, some modern day violent comedy, sexualized, whatever. But you want to be able to paint pictures, so comparables are important for that. But you also need to be able to cite financials, just to reference, the success of these other shows so that you can kind of build a picture a little bit of how successful that show might be if it actually works. Now, optional is you could make, and I recommend it, I say optional because if you have the pitch down, that's already a lot of it, right? Which means you've done a lot of work to actually understand the audience, who it's for, who the distributors might be or partners in this, who's ideal for it. You might even want to start thinking about who showrunners might be that would be good for this show because they worked on similar things. Attaching people to shows is always a good idea before you walk in and try and get it done or pitched, because even though that's not a must, we'll get into that in just a second. So I also recommend to have 2 versions of a pitch deck, a PDF document that's visually beautiful, one with bullet points and images where you outline all of the above that we just talked about that you'll use as a visual guide in your pitch presentation, and one more with more details in it called a leave behind, so that you can actually, when you're done with the pitch, leave it to the executives, because when you pitch to a development executive, that's not it. That's just the first round. You go through multiple pitches and multiple rounds up the ladder, right? So you need something for them, or you don't need it, but it's ideal to have something for them to study and make sure that if they are actually crazy enough to advocate you and pitch your idea, that they have something that will help them pitch it the way that it should be pitched. So it gives them the information at a glance. Again, executives are very busy and they're not going to spend a lot of time learning your pitch. So give them something that they can kind of easily pass on, and that basically is the pitch that you've delivered verbally, but in PDF form, and that should have images and things like that on it. So and the comparables and on all those things. We're not going to get into how to make a pitch deck, but that's kind of a good idea to have 2 versions, right? So you're going to pass that along with the pilot script. The show Bible could be a part of that deck. And then you'd also want to link in the leave behind to the video that we're going to discuss now. So when I said earlier, if you already went out and shot your pilot, the good news is if you have all that footage and you have a finished pilot, you can chop that down into a dope, kick-ass 2 to 5 minute proof of concept. And believe me, you'll think, oh, but we spent all this time shooting. You're going to have an incredible proof of concept video then. So the money's not wasted. You just might feel like it is because it's 2 to 5 minutes long instead of your full 20 minutes or 40 minutes or God forbid hour. But believe me, if you just pick the best of the best of the best parts and tighten that up into a little 2 to 5 minute video, that's going to hit a lot harder and people are actually going to watch it. Busy people that have jobs at networks that look at hundreds of submissions are going to actually watch that as opposed to a full episode. So shoot a 2 to 5 minute proof of concept, not a sizzle reel, a proof of concept video that shows the 3 whys, the vibe, it makes that makes all the things that make this project unique and different from similar shows. And the video should, again, not be just a sizzle reel or a trailer. It should be something with something a person with the attention span of a goldfish can watch and instantly understand why this show is a great idea to produce and why it's important to do now. All this having been said, if you're not an established producer and you don't have a track record in television, you are best off taking these assets to a producer who does have a success record selling similar shows to networks and pitching to them. That's hard. They have their own projects. But if you can break through to them, they can take you to the next level, because you'll not only need to prove the concept itself, like I said earlier, but also the capability of producing at scale, on time, and up to network standards. And frankly, if you've never done it, it doesn't matter if you've even done a feature or if you've done music videos, it's different to television. The workflow's different. They're not going to give you a show just by yourself. They might love it so much, and you might have a great lawyer, and they might say, we'll give you a showrunner, we'll do that stuff, but now you're asking them to do work for you. And they have a lot of other pitches they're listening to where they don't have to do that work because it's the producers that have already sold them a show coming in and offering them their next idea, or it's something they're developing in-house. So you got a lot to fight through. I don't want to dissuade you from doing it, but be smart about it and concentrate your efforts and make a really kick-ass proof of concept, get your pitch down, understand all these things that we were talking about here, and you have a better chance, especially if you go to a producer and convince them to get on board with you. Now, you're going to give up some ownership there, maybe a lot, but believe me, if you've never gone through QC for a real TV network, trust me, there are things that you don't know and you don't want to learn the hard way. Partnering with a producer who's done it will open more doors and teach you the reality of things. And then when you have experience yourself, you can go out and do the next one on your own. Or maybe you'll say, hey, I actually like this partnership. Don't be greedy. TV shows are a team sport. It's not all about you. 5, 10, 15, 20%, whatever. You should be okay with it. You have a show on television, right? This is your entry point. So think about it also from the perspective of an executive at the network. They're a corporate employee with people above them wanting to fire them, right? To protect their own jobs, basically. So not wanting to fire them, but if you slip up, it's easy to say, oh, it's their fault. The show doesn't do well. It's their fault. You don't deliver. It's their fault. They're gone. And there's people below them waiting to take their jobs, just waiting for them to step aside so that they can be in development now or be an executive now at that level. So they're never going to risk their job for someone new. And if you're David Lynch going into ABC to pitch Twin Peaks, that's one thing. He has a solid track record, an award-winning filmmaker already at that point, was nominated for Oscars. And the risk can be, leveraged against the payoff there, and nobody can blame you as an executive for believing that an award-winning established writer-director, didn't deliver on his ideas. It's a little bit safer for you. But if you're new, it's clearly the executive's fault for advocating you, and they're going to get canned. So if you're new to producing and you want to jump right into TV, I actually strongly suggest that you hit the brakes and produce a low-budget film first, or do something else first. The movies are a little bit better, even though things are a little bit volatile for everything right now in this very moment in time that I'm making the video. But there are more options with a movie, and if you have a movie that does well, more doors will open for you. So you can, you can spec a film, meaning you can raise funds independently. You can make it. If you can't sell it, you can always go the festival route, distribute it independently, maybe try to recoup some budget in some way, or at least get it out there. With a pilot, you're kind of stopped. You're kind of stuck. So again, please drop a comment below telling me the timestamp and part of the video that you found most useful. And if you want me to expand on any specific topic here any further, that way I'll know to focus more on those parts that you mention in the comments, and I'll create more content about that so we can expand on this conversation. Again, check out the description for links to cool stuff. Please subscribe and like so I know to make more videos like this. I hope this was helpful. Listen, this industry, it requires a thick skin, but if you really believe in your project, be smart about it. Don't waste time and money unnecessarily, right? develop your craft, get better, build your network, build your connections, do commercials to streamline your income, do other jobs. Don't rely on product sales. I have friends who sold multiple shows uh, years ago, and then things dry up, the climate changes, the environment changes, things change, and suddenly, they haven't sold a show in 2 or 3 years. It happens to the best of us. So having an additional income stream from commercial work and so forth is incredibly important if you're really trying to do production full time. Again, in the description below, there's some resources for you to learn more about how to do that. But regardless, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.